Welcome, Thomas Ramsed at
Thank you.
Live with Yuka van Dam. It's so nice having you all the way from Norway on my feed here today. Thanks so much.
No worries. I'm glad to
So,
join you.
amazing. So, Thomas, I just wanted to give a bit of intro so people can know who you are. So, Thomas worked in the IT industry for all of his life, and one of his biggest mantras was saying that he would never end up in sales and then he would never want to manage people. 25 years after graduating from the University of Bristol, he's now the CEO of Knirkefritt, a IT consulting company in Oslo, Norway. So if you've watched Vikings and seen those beautiful scenes, that's where Thomas is from. If you like salmon, that's where Thomas is from. Thomas really believes that relationships, in building relationships that last, and that it's really the foundation of coaching clients and employees. Thomas, I wanted to ask you, in terms of your mantra, in terms of relationships that last and coaching clients and employees, why is it important to coach clients and employees?
It is important to coach both clients and employees because you want people to actually perform at their best, and sometimes people, for example, clients, they feel that you are there in order to sell them something, or to convince them to buy something, or whatever. But if you sort of if you in you know you convince them that you're there in order to help them, and sometimes provide experience and knowledge that you have, you gain trust, and they actually believe in you and what you're saying, and then you can help them. And at the same time, you can do that with your employees, because a lot of people, they feel that they underperform, or they can't achieve at their best. But if you actually convince them to believe in themselves, and actually that they probably think that they underperform, but what they usually do is that many times they overperform. So I think it's really good to have a decent chat about those issues.
So what I'm getting from you is like your buzzword is your help, support, and trust. And
Yes.
those are kind of like the foundations as a leader as well.
Yes, indeed. It's really important to build trust. I think it's important to be a bit open. I mean, a lot of people, they believe that there is one part which is you and the private you, and the other thing is the professional and who you are at work. I I truly believe that there is something in between. I mean, you don't go to work and tell them all your inner feelings or all your inner thoughts. But if you open up a bit, tell them about your private life, what you like, a bit about your for example, your kids or your cohabitants, or your hobbies. People will open up as well. And that will build a relationship. And sometimes people have issues or problems. Let's for you try to make a budget, and people are really, really, really reluctant, for example, to spend money. Sometimes that fear comes from previous experiences, and if you learn about people and the history, it's easy to see where they come from, and that can actually help you, build a relationship and actually progress in your work, your current work. So a lot to do has to do with history.
I love what you're saying. I think you know that I'm a major fan of Patrick Lencioni's book, Five Dysfunctions of a Team. I've spoken about him so many times. And one of the exercises that he gives in his book, and I've done that many times with teams, is we would sit around a table, and in the workbook it would literally say, tell me about yourself, so they have to share how many siblings do they have, what hometown do they come from, what was the worst work experience they had, what was the worst career ever. So by doing that, they actually become a bit vulnerable as well, but they kind of
Yes.
like can get humorous. And what has been interesting for me is sometimes it actually kind of sparks much deeper things. So
Yes.
once, which was quite scary, if I can share that, is once I asked this question in a group, and the one lady literally started crying because she lost her brother when
Yes.
she was younger. So that was just a sibling question. You never know what the triggers for people are, but it was such a safe space. She felt that she could talk about it. So
Mm.
I think that really creates that trust. And it's like, we're not machines, we're humans, we can relate, we have common experiences. So you were talking about hobbies, and I know you are a skier. I mean, we were just
Yes.
talking about it before the interview. So I wanted to ask you, you shared a story with me about a ski instructor a while ago that nearly died from an avalanche.
Yes.
Would you mind sharing that story and like the lesson that he taught you and your family and your kids on
Yes.
safety and
Yes.
listening to a leader?
Yeah. This is we go skiing every year in France. I go twice a year, of course. We the whole family is quite eager. We're quite eager, and we go ski 4 to 5 days a week. And our ski guide in France, Vincent, in French Basel. When he was 19 years old, he did his military service, and he was an eager skier then, as now, and he was a professional skier as well in moguls. Um, what he did was that, of course, he was such a good skier, so he joined, the mountaineers, and there was this nice, really, really nice powder area where he was stationed, and what he did, that was prohibited. That was, don't go there. It was not because it was unsafe or anything, but it was just, no trespassing whatsoever. And of course, he was 19 years old, a lot of snow, so he went there. He was caught in an avalanche, and he was buried. He had just one hand above the snow, and his head. The rest was buried, and he was alone, of course. And he spent, almost the whole day getting out of the snow. And the next week, he just sat in his bed in his corner, and just in a fetal position, just crying, and was really shocked. He was really, really scared, because he just managed to survive this ordeal. And of course, he couldn't tell anybody as well, because this was, an area which he should not have been in. And he was just terrified. And I mean, he told us, he told the kids, and of course, there are many lessons here. And one thing is that there are some things you can do several times, and you can do them badly, and you can survive, and the damages are not that bad, But there are some things you just do once, and sometimes you survive, and sometimes you die. You can actually die, and he was just so close from dying. He was lucky that he had just just his hand, so he can try to he actually managed to dig himself loose. But if both his arms had been buried in the snow, he'd been gone. He'd just been frozen, and they would probably see him in the summer or never. So yeah.
So what was the
It's
impact? What was the impact on you and your family on actually hearing his story? Like, yeah.
Yeah, it's of course, if you get really connected to Vincent, because this was no deal to him, and for him to tell that to us, he opens up and he tells us this story, and it's not only because he wants to tell us the story, but it's about safety. It's about, avalanches are really, really nasty stuff. It kills people every year. And the other thing is that, of course, it makes us understand better his choices, and why he takes us skiing the places where we go skiing, and where we don't why we don't go to places we don't go to, because there are places which looks really, really nice, but they are dangerous. So it makes us better understand his judgment.
I had a discussion of someone in the mining industry the other day, and he said safety is a real concern there,
Yeah.
and that they're actually doing an entire campaign for the managers and the leaders to actually say your staff safety should be a concern of yours, where their focus was so much more on profits and are we getting enough gold and whatever it might be, and their focus and their KPIs or how their performance is measured was not at all on the safety of their staff. So he asked them the question, would you allow your son or your daughter or any family member to go into that area
Mhm.
where they are mining the gold? And they were like, no. And then he said, well, that's not a concern then. If
Yes.
you're not actually, if you don't care enough for your people as if they are your own people, then there's a concern. So what I wanted to talk to you about next, Thomas, is Chernobyl. So I was so shocked on many levels, and I was very excited because got a lot of material when I watched the Chernobyl series. Because I do a lot of work on emotional intelligence and leadership, what I saw there in the series was really examples of toxic leadership.
Yes.
And I just wanted to ask you because you were obviously in Norway when everything went down. And from my understanding, in South Africa, there wasn't even a lot of awareness of what was
No.
happening. A lot of it was buried at that time. Only much later on did the real horrors come out. But like Europe actually were aware much quicker of the real impact and damage of the radioactive gases that were going around when it happened. So, what was happening? I think you said you were 18 at the time. What was the bigger impact of Chernobyl, what you were noticing as a child, and then later on, still today in
Yes.
Norway?
Yeah. This was of course really, really bad, because of course, it was a nuclear explosion, which is for anybody, it's really, really bad. It's lethal. And the other thing is that, um, the plume, where it actually goes, where with the wind, that sort of affects the reaction of the different countries. And unfortunately, it went westwards and sort of northwest, and that's Europe, and that's Northern Europe. So of course, in the end, it ended up here. And to make a really, really long story short, it affected the whole Norwegian economy. It affected a lot of people. It affected, the livestock. It also affected, all animals, reindeer, salmon. We couldn't eat fish, sheep, reindeer for a long time, and also we couldn't sell that meat and goods to foreign countries. Um, but of course, I'll recommend the series, because it actually gives a really, really good picture of what's happened. But what we see, and this is culture based. It's gives you a good picture of the culture in all these bloc countries. And it's a fear-based culture. It's, as you say, it's really toxic, but you have to understand it in order to understand, the people. And but what are the giveaways and takeaways from this is that, in order to, in your company or in your private life, to to actually have change, is that you have to let people fail. If you don't allow people to fail, you will not change, you will not thrive. Because in order to learn, in order to change, in order to actually move in a different direction, you have to gain your own experience as well. You have to read, you have to try, you have to error, and then you have to analyze and evaluate, and okay, how did it go? And then you can make changes, or you can say, oh, that was a good idea, we just continue. But if it's all toxic, and if it's all fear-based, you will just be stuck. So from a management and coaching point of view, that is one of the takeaways, definitely.
I remember those moments in the series where a brand new guy in the control room was given instructions, and as he was looking at the list of instructions, half of them was scratched out. So he phoned the operator and he said, "What should I do? Should I follow the scratched out instructions or should I ignore those?" And they said, "Yo, follow the scratched out instructions." And then the manager comes in and he just throws the clipboard, yells at him and says, "Don't you know what to do? Just follow my orders." So really what you're saying in terms of fear-based culture that was there, but
Yeah.
they were also like getting back to Patrick Lencioni's 5 dysfunctions, there was a fear of conflict. So they were scared to push back. There was no trust. They didn't trust the manager. He didn't trust them, but there also wasn't clear communication to be like, look, we don't know what to do. Let's take the steps. Let's rather test it. Let's not force people in the middle of the night that are really tired to do something that they've never done. That's just like an example of a disaster in
Yeah,
itself.
exactly. And the same thing happened during the Second World War, on the D-Day, because the whole sort of Canada, the USA, the English forces, everyone crossed the channel, and they didn't want to wake up Hitler, because it was late. And yeah, we all know the result. So so yeah, a toxic culture and fear-based management culture is not good at all.
Where have you noticed emotional intelligence showing up in sports?
Yeah, well, recently, I'm not a I have to say that first. I'm not a big football fan, but I love to see management skills being employed in football or rugby or golf or whatever, because it's really, really interesting. And if you look at Liverpool, which is one example, I'll give you all the examples as well. If you look at Liverpool, they engage Klopp. Klopp is he's a German, but he's a guy that really, really gets involved. He's laughing, he's smiling. Yeah, he learns about the people in his players, but he also shows the players that it's just not only their level people on the pitch, it's all the people around us, all the people that clean the lavatories, clean the footballs, sell the tickets and everything. And what he does is that he's really, really good at engaging people, building trust, and empowering people to actually reach their full potential. And another good example is Alex Ferguson in Manchester United. And Alex Ferguson was, he was he's a Scottish guy. He comes from a modest environment, and he also he really cared for all the players, all the people working on and off the football pitch. It was not only 11 players. It was a huge company. He talked to everybody, and it's really, really important to get all the people involved. And I just have to look at my notes because I remember it now, because it was Terefilov. He's I'm not into handball either, but Trefilov is a Russian handball coach.
Oh,
Yes,
Russian.
Russian, yes. And he is, he's the quite opposite. He if you, for example, look at football matches, of course, some of the coaches are engaged, but it's because it's emotional, but they are engaged in a positive way, sometimes in a negative way. But Trefilov, he is quite the opposite. He is yelling, he is screaming, he is shouting. He is like all over the place, and it's all it's he's like almost he's like a bad teacher from the old days, whipping people, and he's just so mad. And it's actually terrible watching him. It is. And
But what is the impact on his team? What are you noticing?
that's the most interesting part, because he actually managed to win a lot with
Okay.
because he was the coach for the women team. But so he won a lot. But if you put him in a different situation, for example, with a different team, with a different culture, he would probably not succeed. But if you take, for example, Klopp, he of course he has had a career in professional football. He started off in Germany. He built his career, and he won in Germany, and then he won with the Champions League with Liverpool as well. So, for example, with Klopp, you could put him in different teams, football teams, and he would succeed. If you put Trefilov, with, for example, a different handball team, national team, he would probably fail. Put him with, the French national team, he would fail, probably, most likely.
What I noticed, what's aligned to what you're saying, is sometimes when I was in the advertising industry, it was very toxic. And I've heard so many stories of people that were actually on the creative side. So if they were designers, if they were creative directors, where they were saying everyone coped and they did incredible work, but they were all addicted to something. So whether it was coffee, food, alcohol, drugs, like they had to find something to cope. So what I even noticed in that advertising industry, the performance may have been great, but holistically, we weren't really mentally healthy. We
Yeah.
weren't holistically on the inside, we weren't okay. So maybe the output was good, but as human beings, we weren't okay. So possibly those handball players might not actually, like in the long run, they might actually sit with scars
Mhm.
that might not show up right now, but that's going into their conditioning,
Exactly.
for the future.
Yeah, they would probably perform based on fear, but they might not perform again and again and again. But and as a leader, yes, of course, he won a couple of championship, quite a lot actually. But if you put him in a different team, it wouldn't function. And if you, for example, put those players on a different team, they wouldn't perform either. So it wasn't an inner motivation, it was just them being afraid, and that's why they performed.
And I think that's what they call the mentality of if you're only motivating from a carrot or stick mentality. So you
Yeah.
either have to give people incentives, bonuses, money, like you're going to run out of that. You can't do that all the time.
No.
Or it's the fear, we're hitting you over the head. And what you're talking about is actually the opposite of
Mm.
getting them to want to be inspired by you, to feel that they want to follow you. We have a question here, Thomas,
Yeah.
that I've put on the screen. So this is Yuri from the Magic Source. I love your work, Yuri. It's nice to have you here. And he's saying, wouldn't different teams not respond to different types of leadership?
Hmm.
What are your thoughts on that?
I think that I basically think that um, I've been myself for a very, very long time. I'm not good at being anybody else, and I've been trying to be open, both to customers, clients, employees, people I've been working with, and some people can't sort of not handle me, but they sort of dislike me,
That's
and
so hard to understand.
nah, not if you know the whole of me. No, well, but of course, we all have sort of personalities or aspects or nuances that that people dislike. But you should many times it's things or personality aspects that they either dislike with themselves, or aspects that they would like to have, and it's the same with me as well. If you have, for example, a person that is, for example, he's good looking, he's charming, he's really good at the podium, he knows all the words, he knows what to say, and all the people just gather around and say, wow, that was really, really excellent, and you think for yourself that, yeah, I want to be like that as well. But I yes, I know, there are types of leadership, but I actually, if you look at Ferguson, and if you look at Klopp, and you look at me, and you look at a lot of other people, I actually, I don't execute different leadership. I'm just doing what I believe in.
Yeah.
And that's I work well with people that believe in the same things, and that's why I say, we in our company, we employ people based on culture.
Yes.
What are their beliefs? We don't look at the CV because we know they're good. For example, you know that they are good at developing software or whatever, but we need to know the sort of the inner workings. What makes them tick.
Yeah.
And we have a sort of a test, a small. I'm not
That's
quite sure what
good.
it's called in English.
Assessment.
Yes, it's
Mm.
an assessment. It's a sort of litmus test. When you with acidity or things. And what we say is that if we can talk with this guy or girl, in a bar over a beer or over a Coke or whatever, for a whole evening, and you can talk about hobbies or family, cats or kittens or dogs or whatever, skiing, handball, football, rugby, golf, whatever. And you if you can do that for a whole evening, then it's okay. Then it's thumbs up, because then you have the same fundamental idea of how things should be sort of run, and we can talk to each other. And if we have some difficulties, it's okay. We know that we can talk to each other. And I don't execute different types of leadership. What I do is that sometimes I talk more and sometimes I listen more.
Thomas, are you okay to go another 10 minutes?
Yeah, no worries.
Okay, brilliant. So Yuri was just giving some context, and he said his brother and himself both play sports, but he found that the coaching that worked for his brother is really different from what's working for him. So, like for me, Yuri, if I could interject there, is I was chatting to a brand strategist the other day, and we were talking about my brand in terms of training, and I had testimonials from people in the training environment that said that I could relate to the different personality types in the room. So for me, this is almost talking to personality types, preference types, and that was one of the things that I actually learned in Clifton Strengths. One of my strengths, I don't know what the word is now, but it's all about not treating everyone exactly the same. It's actually looking at who is this person and how do I need to treat them. So different people, if you have a really quiet people in a training session, you might have to address them directly and get them to do things differently to like make them come alive. And in the same way with a team member, so that's just from me side as a trainer, but I'm sure that as a manager as well. Some people you might have to be a lot stricter with. Others you might do one reprimand and you'll never get any behavioral issues ever with them again. Well, others will need formal warnings, like proper disciplining things. So Thomas, I wanted to get to a question that I had for you was so you obviously have kids. What do you feel is the difference between mentoring, management, and parenting? Are there similarities for
Yeah,
you
of
between
course.
those three?
Yeah, we can get back to Yuri as well, because he gave us this story with him and his brother, and it's a really good example, Yuri, and I I, um, I totally see what you mean, but what I do is, for example, what I've done, what I would do in your situation then is that I would actually listen, to both you and your brother and my employees as well, and find out what makes them tick. But my foundation for managing people and coaching people is actually getting involved and talk to people and try to understand them and what makes them tick. And that is my foundation, and I won't change that. But what I might change is that I might change the carrot, you know, and I would still listen to you. I would probably encourage you in different ways, because I've got two kids as well, and they got to get. I have to treat them differently, because as you, Yuri, they are actually encouraged and motivated by different things, and I got several employees that are motivated in in different ways as well. But for me, it's getting involved, finding out what makes them tick, finding out what their problems are, and make them think for themselves how to resolve those problems, and ask questions, make them talk, make them reflect, and help them on their way. And I do that with my employees, and I do that with my kids, and I try not to, which is really, really difficult, to sometimes be negative, because sometimes what they're doing wrong, and you know why they've been what they have been doing wrong and why they did it, and you even know the results before they do it. But that's
That's
I
like
mean,
from a coaching point of view,
yeah,
is
that's from a
like
point of view, and
Mm.
that's being adult, and that's being, a good coach to actually to hold back and step back and actually not trying to overwhelm people with all your knowledge and experience. And yeah, and Rebecca says that, how do you balance pushing for results and still encourage employees take care of the internal self? Well, we had a different sort of not session but question you had, Yoki, about the pandemic that is going on, and that is actually a really, really good question, because we have now had this partly lockdown since March last year. So the 12th
It's
of
so
March.
long, so long,
Yes,
hey? Mm.
it's 10 days. 10 days now. 12th of March 2020. We have been sitting still for a year, and it's really, really difficult. And Rebecca asked the questions, how to encourage people to take care of their internal self.
While pushing the results as well. It's
Yes,
like the
while
balance, eh?
producing results, because that is really, really difficult these days, because, okay, what is really, really difficult in Norway now is that, people are working from home, and that is difficult. And people have families, we have kids going to schools, but besides that, everybody's home. Most those who can stay at home stays at home. And it's really, really difficult, because you have to be engaged. You have to fuel your inner flame, and at the same time, a lot of people are struggling with their kids. They are struggling just being a husband and wife, or they have cohabitants or whatever. And it's really, really tough to sort of fuel your inner flame and be motivated. It is. And what I do is that I take people for a walk, and we talk about doing fun things. We actually do, and go out there during the lunchtime, go for a walk. We can go skiing, go cycling. People can actually meet outside, as long as they keep distance. But we're not allowed to meet a lot of people inside houses, visit people and visit friends. We're not allowed to do that. So it is really struggling. And I take people out for walks, and I encourage people to stay physical. I encourage them to, go together for walks. And I try to visit people at home each month. But
That's
it's really,
amazing.
so it's a walk and talk. And
When are you coming over, Thomas? When are you coming over?
it's a long
So
walk. It's a long walk.
it's a long walk. Something that you and I discussed in a previous conversation was actually about that book Contagious. Where I said to you, wow, it's actually so amazing where they did an experiment on students trying to see if they actually do physical activity, if they are more able to be persuaded and influenced. And it actually showed that the moment your heart rate goes up and you're busy with physical activity, you're actually able to influence a person so much more. So even from a influencing team members perspective, that's really a smart move to
Yes.
have. Yeah.
Yeah.
Rebecca has another comment. Can I quickly show that as well, Thomas? Would you encourage your employees to start their own business or side hustle while working for you?
Yeah. That is actually what we do is that we actually encourage people, and we actually do have a husband and wife that started. It was the company, but they made an app. Well, they made an app for parents that do have really, really young kids. So these are like they are just a couple of months old, and they have defects on their heart. And it's really, really important to uh, assure that the parents that these are symptoms that are you should consider calling a medic, and these are some symptoms that are totally okay, taking into consideration that it is your kid. So they made an app that made it easier for parents to monitor their child, with a lot of details and history and everything. So yes, we do encourage our employees to, make their own things. If it ends up with a company, that's great. It's really, really important that I think it's really, really important for companies to encourage their employees to start companies, because um, what we do need is innovation and new companies, because old companies or other companies will die. So we still need to have this culture that breeds companies and breeds ideas, and not a fear-based culture that sort of dampens enthusiasm and innovation. So yes.
Thank you so much, Thomas. So, last question that I have for you: what are your go-to books for leadership or management? Would you just mind sharing that with us? And then
Yes,
we'll wrap up.
I love books that are based on experience and numbers. I actually got one book here, which is one I read. It's not a new book. It's quite an old book, but it's great by choice.
Okay.
Yes, because what it actually shows is that success is not luck. They usually they used to say that, or they still do that. Culture eats strategy for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And in this book, they actually dig into various companies and examine why they do so well, and why they do so well for a very, very long period of time. It's not like 5 years, it's not 10 years, it's 20 years, and many of those companies you haven't heard of. And it's usually it is culture based, and
That
I
sounds
I
amazing.
yeah, and I think it's you have projects that I love history. And if you look back at history, because for example, if you read the HP Way, it's a really old book, but it's a book about the culture in Hewlett Packard. And in those days, what we know now and what we talk about, we talk about fear-based culture. We talked about all these buzzwords, start with why, and things like that. But those guys, Hewlett and Packard, they started off with a company and they just did what they thought was right. And a lot of people did that, and a lot of companies thrived because of that. And I think it's really, really nice to read books about stories that are really, really easy to remember and that you can relate to, because you can tell those stories as well, and you can make up your own stories instead of just reading management books, from that are just based on, for example, numbers, and are really, many of them are really, really boring. But if you read books that sort of touches you, and that gives you something, and that you can relate to, and that you can come up with your own stories, those are really, really good books.
I want to just share a little story with you as we end off. I was preparing for a talk that I'm doing on Friday, and I
Yeah.
decided to bring in the one story from The Alchemist. I don't know if you've
All
read The
right. Yeah. Yeah.
Alchemist.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's my
Yeah.
favorite book. And there's a story where this guy goes to a guru and he wants to find out like what is the number one rule for happiness or success in life. And he says to him, I don't have time for you right now, but just carry the spoon and make sure that you don't drop the oil that's on it. Like, just make sure. And so he goes around and he's like really careful. And by the end of the afternoon, he comes back and he's like, did you notice the tapestries? Did you notice the waterfall? Did you notice the stairs? Did you notice the weaving? And he said, no, but I've got the oil. And he's like, no, 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 go back, go explore. And he goes and he sees everything and he experiences everything and he gets so motivated and he comes back and he's like, oh my goodness, it was so amazing. I saw this, I saw this, I saw this. And he's like, but where are the drops of oil on the spoon? And he said, I didn't pay attention. He's like, that's the number one rule for happiness and success in life. Noticing everything, but still keeping your eye on the drops
Mhm.
of oil on the spoon. And I think even as a leader, it's like taking people and experiences, but still not dropping the ball, still focusing on is the team going to win, but will they still be okay by the end of the game, or are they going to die on the inside? You know?
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. Thank you so much for your time, Thomas.
No
We're going
worries.
to end the session now, and I hope to have you back on
Yeah.
another one of these in the future. It was so nice to have you.
Glad I could join you.